Today on Guns Club, we'll explore how the United States destroyed more submarines from the air than at sea, and even with 50 caliber machine guns causing heavy casualties to the Axis, and winning World War II at sea. It sounds pretty hard to believe, but the statistics don't lie. These are all the reported German submarine losses in the war, which we can see much better represented in this table from a detailed study. The Americans sank more submarines with airplanes than with warships. In fact, we can see in this graph how year after year the Western Allies started to defeat more submarines in an overwhelming way. This happened when airplanes were widely used for anti-submarine work, so by war's end, airplanes had defeated more submarines. Although they weren't used this way for the whole war, this statistic is clear. Airplanes were much more important in defeating them, both the submarines and the Allied submarines together. It's something extremely counterintuitive. How could an airplane sink a submarine? How did one of the Allies turn their planes into true U-boat killing machines? In this video, we'll clarify all the Allied aerial anti-submarine tactics. The German submarines were a real problem for the Allies in the early stages of the conflict. They literally sank more ships than could be replaced, being extremely successful. If we look at this statistic taken from the monthly intelligence reports of the United States anti-submarine warfare, we see something interesting. The losses caused by the U-boats at first were greater than the ships being built, which was a catastrophe for the Allies. But if we look specifically at 1942, the situation changed dramatically. When the United States entered the war, it expanded anti-submarine aircraft and intensified patrols. One of the reasons for this change, of course, was deciphering Enigma, but the most important factor in this change was this aircraft. Let me introduce you to the B-24 Liberator, one of the most prolific bombers of World War II, and a key component of the Western Allied Air Forces during World War II. It was also the aircraft that defeated the most submarines in the entire war. They were bombers, but they turned out to be so effective at destroying submarines that their role changed considerably. By the middle of the war, they were essential for destroying submarines that could be a threat to Allied convoys. We can see the nature of their work in the anti-submarine instructions of the United States fleet. The B-24 could detect submarines autonomously using classic radar vision techniques or magnetic detection devices. Submarines often surfaced to recharge their batteries, which they had to do every 12 or 24 hours, or they could even stay underwater longer if they had a snorkel. Once detected, the submarine could be attacked in 3 ways. The most effective method was using depth charges. Charges like the Mark 47 carried in large numbers were extremely lethal underwater. The document shows us a diagram of how they were launched. Attack distance was determined by turbulence from the submarine's engines, and 4 charges were launched. They aimed to focus the attacks within a radius 1.5 times the submarine's length, and of course attacking it from the sides. Another way airplanes could attack submarines was through air-sea cooperation, or more importantly, with machine guns. The B-24S had 10 machine guns distributed throughout the aircraft, these being 50 caliber anti-aircraft guns, which used armor-piercing ammunition to be more effective against the armor of airplanes. In the rocket attack section, it says that the machine gun attack against the submarine's anti-aircraft guns should begin at about 1,800 meters away. During the approach or later, it says the use of machine guns will be directed directly at the personnel. The next important target is the main engine air induction pipe, which extends from the lower aft end of the conning tower aft for about 7.6 meters. Then, if the compressed air or ballast tanks are visible at the height of the conning tower, clear as day. They tried to disable the submarine by targeting its weak points with machine guns. This pipe was in this position, and if it was destroyed, obviously the submarine would be disabled. You might think machine gun fire wasn't very important after hearing this, but that wasn't true. Initially, submarines would escape combat by diving when spotting planes, but depth charges allowed attacks on them even while submerged and fleeing. So this led to the emergence of U-boats with stronger anti-aircraft defenses. The German U-boats had a heavy cannon capable of stopping a bomber, and you could also see U-boats with 20mm anti-aircraft guns mounted on the submarine's tower. The anti-aircraft armament these submarines carried could vary depending on the type of submarine, but it was very present in the middle of the conflict, as we can see in this chart from the monthly reports on anti-submarine warfare. This way, they could defend themselves instead of running away and crossing their fingers that the charges wouldn't reach them. The men who operated these cannons and anti-aircraft weapons were extremely vulnerable to machine gun fire, which is why machine guns were absolutely essential for approaching a submarine that was on the surface. In fact, firing machine guns from bombers was so effective that Germany removed the high-caliber cannons because operating them was considered a real risk, and replaced them with automatic cannons that were more effective against aircraft. If we look at the end of the quote, it says something quite curious that caught my attention. Won't they intentionally shoot at survivors in the water? If a sailor fell into the water, he was already considered out of action. The machine gun attack is supported by several photos I found of submarines being attacked by machine guns from the air. You might wonder if the machine guns were capable of penetrating the semi-submerged or exposed hull of the submarine, and actually, well, it wasn't really possible. The thickness of the German submarine hulls could reach up to 35 millimeters, and the conning tower up to about 32. If we analyze the ballistic tests by the Marines regarding the armor-piercing ammunition of the M2 machine gun, we see that it can penetrate 1 inch of homogeneous armor, that is 25 millimeters, and that's only at 200 meters, so the projectiles would fall just 1 centimeter short of penetrating the submarine's hull. However, various damages to the submarine's hull from projectiles could cause leaks and disable the submarine when diving, although I really didn't find any case studies that talk about something like this. Maybe that's why. The gunners were only tasked with providing suppressive fire against the submarine's gunners, as well as shooting at the ventilation openings, weak points where machine guns could actually cause damage. If you like this video, you might be interested to know why Orcarian submarines are green. Click to watch. Thanks for watching and goodbye.